It's Monday.
Again. It's Monday again.
Well, we're going to hope this time, because it's training, that the internet gods are going to shine on us this morning during our hot topics with a little bit of tech challenges, but that's okay. It's okay. So as I check to make sure that everything else is working well, and it seems to be, have you ever had a virtual assistant or anybody working for you?
Okay,
I know you've had employees, so I want to talk about the difference a little bit later. But
sorry, I was waiting for the B-roll.
No, we're not going to do the B-roll today. I don't want to mess up the internet gods.
Okay, sorry. The question again.
I know you've had employees, obviously, because you ran lots. So I'll talk about the difference between a virtual assistant and employees a little bit later. Have you worked directly with a virtual assistant?
Yes.
Perfect. And how did it go?
It was great when I got my acting gear.
And we're going to talk about how that's really important too.
There's, here's the interesting part about VAs, virtual VAs. It's like having an assistant when you're in person in a corporate environment. And the thing is, when you have somebody in your office, you can, go back and forth with them. You got another idea. You're able to get it done. You know their personality. You've met them. You've talked to them. VA is like, they could be anybody. If you didn't even chat with them on a video call, who knows? We don't know what their personality's like. Yeah. And you don't have the option to just drop by their desk.
Right. And there is a big difference, but I kind of want to talk about, so we'll talk about that. It's a good segue of what a VA isn't.
Right.
Because a lot of people feel like they're at their beck and call.
Right.
But there's a few specific things that you have to keep in mind when working with somebody. So for people that don't know, I actually started my business as an entrepreneur, as a VA. I didn't do one little bit of VA work ever, even though I set up the entire everything. I did marketing. I set up all my website. I set up all my pricing and structure and business cards and everything. I had it all ready to go, started networking, got my first client, never did any VA work because she realized that I knew more about marketing and wanted that help instead. So when I think about VAs, I did a lot of research on how to be a VA, what systems you can put in place, what kind of things that you can do with them. But one thing, and I actually remember having coffee with somebody who had been a VA for a really long time before I had sort of jumped into it. And one of her biggest things, which I actually have an article here as well that talks about what a VA isn't. And one thing that you need to realize is that they're not just for you. You're not their only client.
Right.
So if it's like, I know we're going to probably compare this a lot to the person who does our social media, which is Spencer, who we love. And the way that her time is structured, I think is very good. It works really well for me. I know it works really well for you. But again, realizing that we are not her only client.
No.
And if something pops into our head, like today, we just, had a meeting earlier, like, oh, but we know we need to be organized for her.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is that if they have their time blocked, it's like, but I need this done. And it's like, well, that's not my problem. Yeah. Like you weren't organized enough for me, therefore it can't get done.
Yeah, I think it's very, with Spencer, she structured her piece so that, you have your day, right? You have your day or your 2 days, however you've hired her 3 days, whatever you've hired her. But those are the days that you have to come prepared. So by 9 a.m., if we're working with her on, for example, Thursday, at 9 a.m., she goes into her account of how we talk to her. And we talk to her through Trello usually. And it's she has a list from us that says this is what we need done. So remember, so let's say she's set up for us for the day. So she works 8 hours just for us. So if you're not prepared, she can't wait for you. Like her hours are scheduled. So she can't do anybody else's work. Right. So, it really, I have to tell you, I mean, I've seen a lot of people that don't understand that concept and think that they can just send things late. And it doesn't work that way because it's not fair. She's got her hours scheduled. So you're basically asking her or your VA, whoever, to wait and do the same amount of hours like at night or something because you're not prepared. And, it's really completely, unprofessional. And you would never do that to your client. So unfortunately, people have a tendency to do that with assistants and VAs, right? They're just not.
Absolutely.
They don't appreciate their time, right?
Absolutely. And I think a couple of things, again, that VAs are not is number one, Jill or jack of all trades.
Right.
So a lot of people feel like you're sort of my assistant and I can get you to do this whole list of things that I could possibly come up with off the top of my head. But a lot of people, they specialize in certain things, and you need to recognize their talents and what you're hiring them for and not steer too far off of that. So if we're hiring, Spencer to do certain things and we know what they're doing, or any VA for that matter, because a lot of VAs do a lot of bookkeeping, administrative tasks. Some of them do emails, but I think that needs to be the discussion, in the beginning,
right?
So that you know what those expectations, because they can't necessarily do absolutely everything.
And, I think for a lot of it is, usually VAs are either they are creative and strategic and they can do that stuff, or they're really incredibly great at systems, right? One or the other. They're not usually good at both. So, if you're not good at two things, what makes you think that they can do it, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. And the other, just one last thing that VAs are not, is that they are not a business manager. That's the other thing. I feel like people kind of go in with this expectation that, here's my business on a silver platter. You're going to run my business.
Yeah.
You're not. That is not what a VA is. It's an assistant, not somebody who's going to literally run every aspect of your business. Well, you know what I do, so just, go do stuff.
Yeah.
They're not there to grow your business. They're not there to run your business. They're there to help you do different tasks within your business.
And it's number one is the first thing you need to do is really interview the person, whether it's on Zoom or one of your other virtual offices that you use. You have to interview them and see, first of all, is it a good fit? Do they really understand what you want and do you understand what they can provide? Right. So you can't just go into it blindly. So you have to make that decision first, because there's a million, so for example, you can save a lot of money if you have a VA in another country, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
People have VAs in India and in Korea and in the Philippines. It's another big one for VAs. Yeah. So, you can save money, yes, but they're not going to understand everything about what you need to do. The English isn't the first language, so you need to understand that. Concepts are very different. And so I'm not saying that it doesn't work, because it does. A lot of people have great VAs in other countries, but I'm just saying that you must make sure that the person you hire is appropriate for your business, because if you actually hired somebody just because it was inexpensive and then they're not doing what you need to do, then, it's going to cost you more to fix it in the end.
Absolutely. And VAs can absolutely 1000% save you time and money. Totally. Because what they can accomplish, and this is where the huge advantage is, you're delegating tasks. So for example, for me, and Faye and I have referenced this many, many times with Spencer. So I can, and Faye can as well. We're extremely capable of creating a graphic in Canva.
Yeah.
110%. However, the length of time that it takes us to do that, it is not worth our time to do that. So we outsource or delegate that, because that's one of Spencer's strengths. So her strength, what she brings to the table, saves us a ridiculous amount of time, because she can do it extremely quickly.
And better.
Way better.
So you guys you can tell the difference when Stacy and I do graphics on our feeds.
You go look.
Because they're very different, right? So, and I remember I said to you it was like a week or so ago, I was doing this graphic, and honest to God, it took me 3 hours to do this graphic, and it wasn't even, there was nothing even exciting about it. And then she just went, oh, is it okay if I change it? Okay. And like literally 30 seconds later, it looked like completely different and way better. And I was just like, well, that was a complete waste of my 3 hours. Right. So
When you could have been doing something again
to generate income.
Exactly. Well, what a concept. And that's what virtual assistants really are. They're there to take those tasks off of your plate so that you can focus on business development and actually running your business.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tasks that a VA can do for you. But what I strongly suggest is, again, if you're hiring a VA for, say, 5 hours, they have different packages, 5, 10, whatever hours a month. One of the advantages of the VA is they can do things a lot faster.
Yes.
So don't judge it on how long it takes you to do it. Ask them how quickly they can do it. And then you can judge how many hours. And I think what people end up realizing is how unbelievable, like helpful and everything a virtual assistant becomes in your business. And they realize, I think I need to keep her a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think,
or him or her.
People don't realize really, like, it comes down to math. It's really just math. So if you charge, let's say you're just beginning and you don't have a lot of money, and you charge $100 an hour to somebody to help them do whatever it is, and you can get a virtual assistant for $25 an hour. Okay. So you could pay them $25 out of your 100, because you're making 100. So you're paying them $25. You're still making $75 an hour. And the truth is, if you had done their work, it would have taken a lot more time. So it's really just fundamentally math. You can't really, it's in your best interest to hire a VA. This is, of course, if you are actively spending your time generating income. So if you're not, if you just have a VA and you're still not bringing in money, then of course it's a loss, right?
Right.
But if you're trying to set up your business in the beginning, that to me is just the VA is your marketing investment, right? It's not really a cost, like a business expense, because in the beginning when you're not making any money, it's a marketing cost. So it's you investing in marketing to get you out there. And why I say in marketing is just because you're the one who's trying to set up your business. This person is trying to help you, get all the little stuff out of the way. It doesn't mean that they're doing marketing.
No.
It just means that without them, you wouldn't be able to launch your business properly.
Absolutely. And again, understanding what you want them to do. So you, in order to work with a virtual assistant, you also have to be extremely organized.
Yes.
So it actually makes you be more organized than if you don't. Because again, when you're not organized or you don't have anybody helping you, then you literally can wake up in the day and you have it all in your brain.
Yeah.
You can get to work and it's no problem. But when you're delegating, you really do have to be on top of things, and you have to know, again, so when Spencer wakes up on Thursday morning or whenever day for our client, Tuesday morning, and she has a client and nothing's there, that's not her problem.
No.
That's the client's problem.
And we've talked about that in the past, because, it's hard when you're starting out as a VA. You're afraid to say something to your clients, right? You don't want to lose them. You're afraid. And, for me, it's like, they're taking advantage. So, and they have to be trained. So unfortunately, if you are a VA watching, you also have to train your clients, right? So you have to say, look, here's my expectation. You're going to show up I'm going to come out on Thursday, 9 a.m. I'm going to click the button, however you do it, Google Drive, whatever you do, however you do it, all the stuff that I need to do is on there. Understand that you are booked, whatever it is, you're booked for 6 hours from 9 to 3 that day.
Yeah.
If you don't have it done, there is nothing I can do. So the clock is ticking and you're still paying me to do nothing, because I have blocked that time as a VA. I've blocked that time into my calendar. I cannot wait for you to get your act together, right? So if you have to, if you're wanting to think you want a VA, you want a marketing person, social media, whatever it is, you must go in thinking, Wednesday night, it doesn't matter if you're exhausted, if you have a million responsibilities, Wednesday night before you go to bed, you make sure that everything that you need done is there. And if you start getting into that, that organizational piece that you have to get it done, it'll get done.
Absolutely. And that's only one way that a virtual assistant can work. Sometimes what ends up happening is they say, okay, here's a list of stuff to do in general. Right. There's not really a timeline to it. So therefore, in general, the VA will say, okay, well, that will probably take me 5 hours. Right. And they have the flexibility to be able to do it when they want in the midst of their other stuff.
Right.
But again, they're not at your beck and call.
No.
Like, that's the thing. Like, if you're all of a sudden one day and you go, oh, well, I need this file, and you're not as organized, but you left it to the last minute, again, that's not the VA's problem. No.
And when you work on project hours, it's real. Like say your VA said, as Stacy said, this can take 5 hours. The VA will generally say to you, this will take 5 hours, and I'll have it back to you within 5 days, whatever the allocation is. So understand, if you, and the VA, a good VA will say, you also have 2 revisions that I can make. So they'll allocate an hour of that 5 hours. So they'll work on it for 4 hours and they'll keep an hour. So if you want to make any revisions, you have 2 of whatever it is. If they were scheduling your calls, sending emails, it doesn't matter what it is. You have an extra hour to change things up, but that's it. You can't, again, keep going back to them and going, oh, I want to change this. I want to do this. Can you make some calls? It doesn't work that way. You've got an allocation of time, whether it's a day, whether it's a project, it's the same. It's an allocation of time.
Absolutely. And you're delegating stuff for that time. Now, again, I know a lot of VAs work in the, 5 hours a month, 10 hours a month, 20 hours a month. And when their time is booked, they can no longer accept any more clients. So you go to them, it's very possible you say, well, I need more hours, that they may not be able to give you those hours. And really good ones, they're probably booked. Again, understanding that what they can accomplish in that time is an incredible amount of stuff.
Right.
Like, extremely useful. But there's lots of, so some of the things we want to go through today. So there's systems that you do need to have in place. So again, these people are virtual. So they're working out of their houses. So obviously computer systems and all of that need to be set up ahead of time. Mm-hmm. I, as a podcast producer, also have similar systems that VAs would use. So I would say 90% of my podcast clients use a Google Drive. So very helpful when it comes to uploading and downloading documents. But I also have my rules. Like, if you want to have your podcast episode to go out on a Wednesday, on Monday, you need to give that to me 48 hours in advance. I can't work if it's last minute, because I need that time to get other people's stuff done, and you're not my only client. So when I log into that Google Drive, I need to see that it's there. And if it's not, that's not your lack of planning is not my emergency.
No.
So you do need to understand. So Google Drives, Dropboxes, Trello, any way that you can communicate, because communication and making sure that you're communicating clearly is up to you as the business owner. It is not up to the VA to kind of go, huh? What did you mean by this? Because if you say do this, very black and white, and they do exactly that, and it's not correct, or you expected something different, again, that's not the virtual assistant's fault.
Yeah.
So
and the VA has their own systems, and they will cater to individuals to some degree. Yeah. But if you want the best results, cater to how the VA works the rest of their clients, because the easier you can make it for them, the more productive they can be in the hours associated with your time with them, right? Because if you're using some system that they don't use and they're not so familiar with, but you've used it forever, so you want to stick with it, then that takes them time to use your program. And it's again, VAs are accommodating, they'll do it, but you have to understand what happens in the background. It means if it takes them an extra half hour to use your system, That's a half hour you lose in
Yeah.
whatever it is that you wanted them to do.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of people want to have those bigger, longer calls. So
Yeah.
let's take the example, same thing of like, I have you for maybe an hour a week, because
Yeah.
I know that's very common because a lot of people like to split that up.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, what ends up happening is if the client wants to speak to you for an hour to talk about what you're going to do for the hour,
That's 2 hours.
that's 2 hours. So
Yeah.
I know, so we are very cognizant.
Yes.
And this is things that we've learned. And that's why we're sharing these today, things that we've
Yeah.
learned over the past, like almost a year that we've been working with Spencer. In the beginning, we would take a lot more time,
Yeah.
and we realized very quickly that that's eating up her time with us. So the more time that we spend on the call, the less time she has
Yeah.
to work, because again, it's that,
And that's the thing that you have to understand when hiring a VA. You've got her time. She doesn't have an extra hour to talk to you. Like,
yeah,
that is in your time. That's a strategy call within your time frame, right? So you want to spend your time talking, fine, but understand that you don't get off the call and still get more time. It is subtracted. So if you're on a 4-hour, maybe you do 4 hours that day, and you're talking for an hour, then that means she's got 3 hours to do your work. So if you have an important project, it's not necessarily going to be done. And on that note, just so we're clear, if you have a big, huge deadline that's coming up and this is a priority, then you need to say on a call, I need this done today. How long is it going to take? And if those hours wipe out all your week, understand that's all you get.
yeah,
Unless you say, do you have extra hours you can bill separately for us to get this done? That's entirely up to you. But remember, you can't come with a big project and say, I need this done, plus I need everything else you do on a weekly basis. And we do that, right, Stacey? We're very fluid. Every week our priorities change, right? So what we started off we're not doing. We need landing pages done, or we need certain things done that are a priority. We understand that that's all that's going to get done on those days, and that's it.
We also own the fact that, okay, well, that means that we are going to have to pick up and do the stuff that we would normally have her to do. Now, just to clarify, Spencer's not a virtual assistant. However, works similarly, which is why we're using her as an example. She works in regards to systems and hours, and so many hours per client. I know she has one client that has her twice in a week, not just all in one day, has split that time up, and that has worked. So she has a certain amount of hours that she gives each client a week.
Right.
I know, again, so every person
works differently.
Everybody works differently.
And you have to, for some of you out there, you might be going, I really need to have, if say you want to allocate 5 hours during the week, you might be one that says, I need her or him 1 hour a day, and all I want them to do is, follow up on emails that are generated for the business, et cetera, et cetera. That's fine. Spread it out 5 hours, but remember, it's 1 hour during the day. So, the goal is eventually, obviously, as you grow your business, you're hoping that you'll be able to get more hours from your VA. Not necessarily, though. That's the one thing you have to ask about your VA when you're hiring them. If my business starts exploding, can you allocate more hours? Because generally speaking, most of them cannot.
Well, the ones that are booked obviously can't.
So you can't start crying after and go, oh no, what am I going to do? You have to be cognizant of the fact that you can either, offer them more money and let them work exclusively for you for more time, or find some way to split your VA business so that you can have one person, for example, doing bookkeeping, one doing emails, and one doing marketing.
Absolutely. Right? But that's where you do need to, lots and lots of information on the internet. I know there's virtual assistant organizations that can literally give you a list of things. Like, I know a lot of people would just be like, I'm just overwhelmed with all this stuff I have to do for my business and I need help, but I don't necessarily know what I can or cannot outsource. And that's where you do need to do your research, find and have those conversations with a virtual assistant and find out what their specialty is. But
Right.
they can help you. They can help you brainstorm. Like they can say, here's a list of things that I do for other clients. Would that be of use to you? And you would go,
Right.
actually, no, I'm good on that side. But another virtual assistant might give you another list. And you're like, yes, that's
Right.
what I need. That's what I need to outsource. That's what I need
Exactly.
help with. And then you have a good fit.
Yeah.
So communication, really important, but be detailed. Like this is where like the systems, I've talked about this, I feel like to ad nauseum. But if you have a system for your business and you have like, when I go to do a post, okay, here's my Facebook login, here's my Instagram login. Like they need to be able to have easy
Yeah.
access to all of that information. So as much detail as you can give them in regards to a project, email, and obviously as you build the relationship and go further in, it becomes easier and easier. They know you, they know how you work, you know how they work, you know what you can get done, and it just kind of works really well. But if you can give them as much detail as possible, that will really help a project or any part of your business get done so much faster. The last thing you want to go, oh, yeah, that receipt, yeah, I don't know where that is. If they're doing bookkeeping as an example, or like they need to know the login for the system to be able to enter that information in. You can't just say, here you go.
Right.
Where is that stuff entered? Where, how is that done? They will make it extremely efficient. Same with filing. If they come in, I know a lot of VAs will do, help you with computerized filing and stuff like that. But you
And
need to
generally
know.
speaking, they'll come up with a better system than what you have.
Absolutely. But you also need to know what works for you, and they need to know that as well. Emails, I know a lot of them spend a lot of time replying to emails.
Yeah.
But if they don't have the information in which to reply with, again, that takes a lot more time. So you do have to be organized when you're working with somebody. It's not as easy to go, I need help. You do need to get yourself more organized, and it will make you more organized. That's their whole job.
And you have to, I go back to the same thing. You have to interview them and understand what skills they have. You cannot assume that they have all the skills that you need. And, simple things like, do you work on a PC or do you work on a Mac? Because here's the thing, we could never work with somebody on a PC. Why? Because all of our presentations are done on Keynote.
Right.
So we both use the Mac environment. That's all we have now. Some virtual assistants have both, right?
Absolutely. That's
good ones can work on a PowerPoint and work on a Keynote, no problem. But you need to ask the question to make sure, because some just don't, right? So I'll tell you an example is not a VA, but one of my clients is a restaurant and they have software. Well, the POS system, the software they use is on a PC and you can't access it on a Mac. And
really?
I for the life of me I just said, I don't even want to deal with them. I know that's your company, but for me, I can't even go there because I cannot, it takes me too long to try to figure it all out. So, so make sure if you say to your VA, I only use PowerPoints, and they go, yeah, no problem, but they really don't.
Yeah.
Find out what their preference is, because that's a huge issue. It will take them much longer to get your stuff done. So try to figure out what environment they actually are working on. And just the other piece for me is, if you're worried about privacy and stuff, VA is probably not your thing.
They can run your life.
Yeah.
They have access to
all your logins. They have everything. So if you need to trust them, right? That's why another country, sometimes you got to be a little bit careful, but you need to trust them with all your logins, with everything, because they can, if anything happens, they can shut you down, right? That's
and on that note, one of the other things that I highly recommend is if VAs are setting things up for you, that you make sure you have those logins. Yeah. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've tried to help somebody with something, and I'll be like, well, what's your whatever? And they're like, I don't know, my VA handles that. Right. I don't know how they log in. I don't know what system they use. And although that's amazing trust, absolutely, always know as a business owner
Yeah.
all the programs, all your logins, all of your information, because again, if your VA decides to go MIA and all of a sudden you can't access your stuff,
Yeah.
or
And
they
it's
decide to
not,
stop being a VA.
it doesn't mean that they're intentionally being malicious. Like
Oh,
the
no, not
truth
at
is,
all.
what happens if they pass away? Seriously, if they
Yeah.
get sick, if all of a sudden, you know, they decide I can't do this anymore, it's not paying the bills, and then just like go away, because you don't know what's in their mind, you don't know what's happening, and if they leave with all your, or you make them mad one day and they just said I don't want to deal with you anymore, right? Like I'm not
Yeah.
saying it doesn't happen, very rarely, but the truth is you have to be ready for it. So I know a lot of people when internet and social media first started, they had asked all their assistants at the time, VA wasn't the word, but they asked their assistants to make them Facebook accounts. So assistants, they didn't know how to do anything. They used their own emails because they didn't know any better. Nobody did, right? So you've got these long histories of, as Stacy said, like I've had clients in the past that we've worked on their strategy and they've come up with new marketing. And then I'd be like, okay, let's log into your Facebook. And they would say, here's the login they would give you, but it's not their email.
Yeah,
So
it's their
it doesn't
VA.
matter if they've got the login if you don't own the email, right?
Yep, exactly.
So,
and I know a lot of VAs, again, just on regards to emailing, I know a lot of VAs who will use their own email address to respond to your clients. And that's not really cool either, right? You want to make sure that either you create another email account that's like admin at, info at, or something like that, so that it looks like it's coming from your company.
Yeah.
Right, which is helpful. So a couple of other things to think about in regards to VAs is just to understand the feedback that you need to give them, because a lot of people go, oh, you know, I don't really want to like say anything. I don't want to tell them they're doing anything wrong. But you need to say, you know, yes, that was amazing. That met my expectation. Or it really didn't. I was thinking this. How could I communicate better? So just make sure that you're touching base on a regular basis to ensure that the system you're using is working, the communication is clear from their perspective, and maybe ask them how that you could be a better client. Like, is there anything I could do differently to make your life easier? But also give them that feedback to say, you know what, I was expecting this. And, you know, maybe it wasn't clear. Maybe they misunderstood. Like, you need to kind of, especially in the beginning, have those very frank conversations so that your working relationship later will be much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then my last one before, because I do want to have a conversation about employees, because I've only had one part-time employee in my corporate life, and I know you've had a lot more. So I just want to talk about sort of the difference, and this will probably lead in a little bit, is the micromanaging. Because I know a lot of people like to micromanage, and I think that can really be a turnoff. Like if I was a VA, I'd be like, oh my goodness, like let me do my work. I'm good. And that just goes back to the trust aspect. So trust your VA to do the work. If you are detailed in regards to your communication and you've given them a clear idea of what you want and you've given them as much information as you can and you're as organized as you can be, there's no need to micromanage.
Right.
They're good to go. They know what they need to do, so let them do their work. But virtual assistants can be an absolute godsend when it comes to running your business.
Right.
How does VAs working virtually with somebody differ? Like obviously you've had a lot of employees in your past.
A lot.
It's different because that employee is there and literally are at your beck and call, and it's a different level of expectation. So what's
well, I mean, I think the challenge, so a VA is very efficient at what they do, and they know what to do because there's a very finite timeline, right? So they know they have either hours or projects and they work on it. When you have employees that are employees on the long term, it's a little bit more fluid in terms of timing. And so, you know, so there's that piece, which is a little more relaxed. And then there's the piece that you know right away if they're capable of doing it or not capable of doing it because you're there, you're physically there, you're seeing them. You're just assuming with a VA that they can do it, right? You just assume. When you have it in person, anytime that we ever do any employee training for any organization, there's always the teaching of it and then the show me stage, right? So here's what you do. Now show me that you understand. So they do it. So you have to think about the same thing as a VA. It's like, here's what I want. Now go and show me that you understand that. So then when they send you that, you can correct them and say, no, this is actually what I wanted instead. Not their fault. It's your instructions that are the issue. When you're in person, you can do it live. Now, you can get around it by doing a Zoom call, which is kind of the same thing, right? Being able to say, show me how you're doing it, but it all depends on what you're doing. So I'm going to give you a good example. And this one will stick in your head so that you can always remember if your instructions are good enough.
Okay.
I ran retail stores all over the world. And it didn't matter whether you were in North America or Europe or Asia, instructions have to be precise. So we had a retail store. So when I first started, I would say, clean the shelves, like make sure the shelves are clean, right? Yeah. And so one day I was alone with the employee and I said, just clean the shelves because this is what I gave them. And I was busy doing my other stuff, running around and looking after all these other stores. And then I watched. And how do you think the employee started? They'd never done it before. So they started at the bottom, right? They started wiping the shelf and they went to the next one. And then I watched for a few minutes and I pulled them aside. And I said, you've never really cleaned anything in your house or anything, right? And they're like, no. And I said, that's fine. Here's what happens. You have to start at the top because the top shelf, the dust falls. If you start at the bottom, by the time you get to the top, the dust falls on all those shelves. Now, as silly as that sounds, if you've never done it, how would you know that?
Exactly.
So when you're thinking about telling your VA or your employee what to do, think of the shelves. Do they know what I'm asking them to do in the right order, right? What's interesting is for me, I grew up in blue collar. I grew up in having to do a lot of chores because my parents worked. My kids live in a different environment, right? They live in a different environment. They still do chores, but not as many. But I can remember mine, I always encouraged them to do things because I wanted them to learn. But I can remember a friend here who said she had a kid who was 15 at the time. Mine were younger. And she said, I can't believe they went off to school and their roommates were laughing at them because they didn't know how to clean a toilet. And I was like, I looked at her and I go, well, isn't that your fault? You never taught your kid how to clean the toilet. How would the kid know? And she's like, I never thought about that. I just assumed they would know. Well, how would they know?
Absolutely.
Right? If you're telling your VA, I just answer the emails. And then when you see one, you freak out because it's not answered the way you would have. How would they know how to answer it?
Yeah, that's not their fault. They did it to the best of their ability. And maybe that's exactly what another client had in regards to expectations. So to them, in writing an email was what they were taught by this other person, but you're a different client. And they are very good at working with different people in different ways. That's one of their main skills. But you have to be specific, just like the shelves or clean the toilet. You have to be specific in regards to what you want.
Just on that, just one more, and I'm just going to help for the VAs. So if you've never hired a VA before, here's the thing. If you hire an employee, there are certain rules and regulations that come with hiring an employee, right? So you must adhere to those guidelines when you hire an employee. When you have a VA, a little different because it's more of consulting work. Right. But you would never bounce an employee's check, right? You would never not pay them for the work done. So if you're hiring a VA, do not make them have to chase you to get paid. Most VAs work on retainers, which is great because you're just revolving. But if you're working on project pieces, do not make them wait 6 months with 4 different emails until you actually pay them. Because you know what? They're the same. If you had an employee, you'd be in trouble with the law for not paying them. So
it's true.
Treat the VA at the same. If they've done a great job for you, pay them. If their terms are net 30, if you don't have a retainer, then pay them in 10. Like, who cares? They did the work.
Yeah.
They did the work for you and they did a great job. So be very cognizant of making sure that you're treating the VA just as you would a regular employee.
Absolutely. And you know what? Take the time. This is the other thing. Like when you're hiring an employee, like I remember when we hired, again, I only had one working for me, but we took a lot of time to ensure it was the right person. We interviewed a lot of different people. We made sure they were the right fit, right personality type. Could they do the work? Were they trainable? There was all of these things that goes into hiring somebody, and there's multiple levels of, again, conversations and interviews and stuff like that. So treat it the same.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you can't interview them. A lot of them will say, anytime you want to talk, make sure that you're asking questions that are good for your business. Again, whether you know what you want to delegate or not, but interview them.
Yeah. And ask them, if it's a creative piece or emails, or ask them, can I see samples of your work? Like, what do you do for other people? Because, think about, for those of you who ever go on Fiverr, for example, Fiverr is, a marketplace that you can get things done really inexpensively. And I've used it. I love Fiverr. And but here's the thing. I go in, I look at somebody making logos. I go in and then I look at all their previous work to say, is this the kind of work that looks like I would like for my brand? And that's how I hire them. And I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, it works well. There's always that 10th, right? And when you think you've got a lock, I can still remember, I thought I had a lock. This guy just loved his work. And then I gave him mine to do this video and I hated it. And I couldn't tell him that because it wasn't my fault. It wasn't his fault. He did what he thought, right? I can't assume it's going to look like one of those other ones. He went with what he thought was appropriate for it and he gave me a revision, but it was like I had given him money plus a revision I had, but it was so off the mark for me that I didn't even use the revision. I just paid him and went, because you know what? He did the work and I appreciate the fact that he tried. It just wasn't where I wanted it to be. So again, not their fault if you haven't done truly enough homework.
Absolutely. I did the same thing. Hired somebody on Fiverr and I loved, it was when I had my book, the 30-day LinkedIn challenge. And same thing. I loved all of the work that they had done in regards to different book covers. So I was like, I'm in. So I paid. Same thing. I think I had 2 revisions and it just wasn't there. And it wasn't their fault. It was because I wasn't clear in regards to what I wanted. I was just hoping somehow that
they would miraculously give you everything you wanted that you don't know what that is, but they do.
They were going to pull a rabbit out of a hat. I don't know what I was expecting. But I was in exactly the same boat. I paid 110% because they did their work. They did it to the best of their ability. They did it with very limited information from me. That was my fault, not theirs, 100%.
Yeah.
I did go somewhere else and found somebody else that I was a little bit more clear on because I had learned and ended up getting a great book cover and it was all good, but not their fault.
And what's really cool about that, to add to that, is when you actually work with somebody for an extended period. So remember, if you're working with somebody, whether it's a VA or you work with a coach, or you work with a producer, work with anyone, the longer you're with them, the more they know you and the better your results, because you've got in a groove. So, Stacy and I, like, we've been fortunate. Spencer's always been amazing. But now, like, because she knows us and what we want to, we just, every time she sends us anything, we're on our phones with each other going, oh my God, did you see what she did? So
but that's also taken, like, there's less and less communication. So we still are very prepared for her. We have a very short call, at the beginning of her time so that we know with any clarity, like she looks and she's okay, I'm good. If she has any questions. But in the beginning, there was lots of, is this okay? Is this what you were thinking? Check-ins from her. And she's great about that kind of stuff. Any feedback. So it was really good. Now we're just like, Oh my God, it was so good.
Yeah, we don't say, she doesn't even ask us anymore because she knows it's good.
Right. And she knows, and that's why it's important. So when you do find someone who's good and you bring them onto your team, keep them,
Yeah,
that.
I can't say that enough. I can't say that enough. Like, if you have somebody working for you that's good, and somebody else comes along that promises you, like, butterflies and rainbows at a less cost, be wary,
Yeah.
because it is the person, they get you, if you've always been happy with them, stay with them, because more than likely you're going to regret your decision and you're not going to be able to come back. It's the truth, because we've seen it, right? People who have left and went other places and they were like, oh, they weren't quite as good, and now my person's booked. Well, of course they are, because your person was good. Right?
Yes, they can be absolutely worth their weight in gold, 110%. Just make sure that you are prepared for them in regards to the hours that they have. And if they do something and they're not producing as much as you had hoped, take a look at how you're communicating with them, because clear communication is just so key.
Yeah. And so my last advice that I'm going to leave you with, and then Stacey will leave you with hers. My last advice, as always, is think about the VA as, look at it like your numbers, and treat it as math, and treat it as an investment. And it's not it'd be nice to have a VA when I can afford it. You need to have the VA before you can afford it. That's what will drive you to get the business. That's what will drive you to get consistency in whatever you're looking to do. So for me, it's understand that the investment in the VA probably won't pay off for a year down the road, unless you've already got a big business, but it will pay off. So, and in spades, because when you get busy, or your business gets busy, you won't have to spend time training somebody. You already have somebody in the loop.
Absolutely. And do your research. I would say that would be the big one. And just when you think you know what they can do for you, ask them for ideas, because
Yeah.
again, they have a lot of other clients and you may not think that it's something that can be delegated
Right.
until they come to you and go, no, I can do that for you. And you're like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. So
Exactly.
have that conversation with them. I'm overwhelmed with stuff in my business. What do you do for your other clients? Don't
Right.
kind of, be open-minded, I guess, to have that conversation. And it's not just that they're a good fit for you, they're also interviewing you, and you have to be a good fit for them. So it's a two-way street, because it's a two-way conversation. It's a two-way relationship. So make sure you have that. So enjoy, go, delegate away, and we are going to do the same.
See ya.